Mind Game 1. The Reality Negotiation Game. The first silent mind game that creates a chasm between the successful and everyone else is what I've termed the reality negotiation game. Understanding this game requires grasping something fundamental about human consciousness. Every person constructs a narrative about reality. This isn't optional. Your brain cannot process raw reality. The amount of sensory information flooding your nervous system every moment would overwhelm your conscious mind into paralysis. Instead, your brain constructs a simplified model, a story about who you are, what you're capable of achieving, what the world is fundamentally like, and what possibilities exist for you within that world. This story feels absolutely, undeniably real to you. It possesses the weight of objective truth. When you think I'm not good at math, or people like me don't start businesses, or success requires connections I don't have, these don't feel like stories or interpretations. They feel like facts about reality, as solid as the ground beneath your feet. But here's the profound insight that successful people have internalized while others remain blind to it. That story is completely, utterly negotiable. It's not truth in any objective sense. It's simply the narrative you've been telling yourself with such consistency and conviction that you've forgotten it's a construction rather than a discovery. Consider the entrepreneur who examines a problem that millions of people accept as an unchangeable feature of reality. Everyone else sees what is and concludes that's how it must be. The entrepreneur sees what is and asks, why could it be different? What if we approached this from an entirely different angle? Think about the artist who creates in a style that doesn't yet exist, who synthesizes influences in ways no one has previously attempted. Before they created it, that style was literally unimaginable to others. Consider the athlete who shatters a record that sports scientists and physiologists had declared was at the absolute limit of human capability, beyond which biology itself would not permit further progress. What did these individuals do that differed so fundamentally from everyone else? They refused to accept consensus reality as the final word. While everyone else was playing the game of this is how things are, treating current reality as fixed and immutable, they were playing an entirely different game called this is how things could be. They renegotiated their contract with reality itself. They understood that what appears solid and unchangeable is often merely a collective agreement, and agreements can be renegotiated. But here's where the reality negotiation game reveals deeper layers of complexity. This isn't merely about thinking differently, about positive thinking or optimistic reframing. It's about something far more fundamental to human consciousness, controlling where your attention flows. Attention is the currency of the mind, the most valuable resource you possess. Whatever you pay attention to becomes real for you in a very literal sense. The things you focus on expand in your psychological reality, while the things you ignore shrink into insignificance. Successful people have mastered the art of attention allocation. They don't passively allow their attention to be hijacked by every notification that buzzes, every fear that whispers, every doubt that creeps into consciousness. They guard their attention with the vigilance of a fortress guard because they understand at a deep level that attention is the gateway through which potential becomes reality. Where your attention goes, your energy flows, and where your energy flows, results eventually follow. Let me break down the neuroscience to make this concrete. Your brain receives approximately 11 million bits of sensory information every single second. This includes visual data, auditory input, tactile sensations, proprioceptive feedback about your body's position, interoceptive signals about your internal state, and countless other streams of data. However, your conscious mind can only process approximately 40 bits of information per second. This creates a staggering discrepancy. You're filtering out 99.99996% of available information at any given moment. Think about the implications of this. The reality you experience is not objective reality. It's a tiny, highly curated slice of reality, filtered through your attention mechanism. The crucial question becomes, who or what is deciding what passes through this filter? Is it you consciously and deliberately directing your attention toward what serves your goals and growth? Or is it your evolutionary programming, designed for a world that no longer exists, constantly scanning for threats and dangers? Is it your trauma responses, causing you to avoid anything that reminds your nervous system of past pain? Is it your social conditioning, directing you toward what your culture deems important and away from what it dismisses? Successful people have taken conscious control of this filtering mechanism. Through deliberate practice, they've learned to direct their attention toward possibility rather than limitation, toward solutions rather than problems, toward growth rather than safety. This isn't denialism or toxic positivity. They're not ignoring real challenges or dangers. They're choosing to focus their limited attentional resources on the aspects of reality they can influence, the opportunities they can exploit, the paths forward that exist even in difficult circumstances. Mind Game 2: The Delayed Gratification War. The second silent mind game that separates the exceptional from the ordinary is the delayed gratification war. On the surface, this concept sounds deceptively simple. Most people are familiar with the famous Stanford marshmallow experiment conducted by psychologist Walter Mischel. Young children were presented with a marshmallow and given a choice: eat it immediately or wait 15 minutes and receive 2 marshmallows. Follow-up studies tracked these children for decades and found that those who could delay gratification showed better life outcomes across multiple dimensions: higher academic achievement, better health, stronger relationships, greater career success, more financial stability. But what successful people understand about delayed gratification extends far beyond simply waiting for a bigger reward. They've internalized a truth that most people never truly grasp on an emotional level. The present moment is constantly trying to steal from the future. Every comfortable choice you make right now, every time you take the easy path, every instance where you choose immediate pleasure over delayed benefit, you're engaging in a form of theft. You're robbing your future self of the person they could become, the life they could build, the achievements they could claim. Successful people feel this viscerally. It's not an abstract concept they intellectually understand. It's a felt sense in their body. They've internalized that their present self and their future self exist in constant negotiation, often with conflicting interests. The present self wants comfort, ease, pleasure, and the avoidance of discomfort. The future self wants growth, capability, achievement, and the fruits of disciplined effort. These two selves are locked in perpetual conflict, and every decision you make represents a choice about which self you're serving. Successful people have consciously chosen to side with their future self, even when it hurts, even when every fiber of their being craves the easy choice. They've made a pact with who they're becoming, a solemn commitment to the person they will be in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. And they refuse to betray that future person for momentary comfort. They hold an image of their future self in their mind with such clarity and consistency that it becomes real to them. That future person isn't an abstraction. They're someone real, someone counting on the present self to make choices that serve them. But there's a sophisticated twist to this game that most people completely miss, even those who think they understand delayed gratification. It's not simply about denying yourself pleasure or embracing ascetic self-discipline. It's about understanding and hacking a cognitive bias called temporal discounting. This is a fundamental feature of how human brains evaluate rewards across time. Your brain naturally, automatically values immediate rewards much more highly than distant rewards, even when the distant rewards are objectively larger. A classic example: if I offer you $100 today, or $110 in exactly 1 year, most people prefer the $100 today, even though rationally the latter is a better deal. The extra $10 is literally free money for waiting. Yet the immediate $100 feels more valuable because it's present and certain, while the future $110 is distant and somewhat abstract. This temporal discounting is baked into human psychology. It served our ancestors well when life was short and uncertain, when seizing immediate resources was often the difference between survival and death. But in the modern world, temporal discounting is often maladaptive. The biggest rewards in life, the truly life-changing achievements, almost always require extended periods of delayed gratification. Building a successful business takes years. Developing genuine expertise in a field takes thousands of hours. Creating a healthy, fit body requires consistent effort over months and years. Achieving financial independence demands decades of disciplined saving and investing. Successful people have somehow hacked the temporal discounting mechanism. They've learned to make the future feel present. Through visualization practices, through constant reinforcement, through creating concrete milestones, they make their future self emotionally real rather than abstractly conceptual. When they're tempted to skip a workout, they don't just think abstractly about being healthy someday. They vividly imagine their future self, strong and energetic, and they feel the emotional connection to that person. They feel responsible to that person. This emotional connection overwrites the natural temporal discounting that would otherwise lead them to choose present comfort. Mind Game 3: The Identity Forge. This brings us to the third silent mind game, the Identity Forge. Most people operate under a fundamental misunderstanding about identity. They think identity is something you discover, like uncovering a fossil that's been buried in the earth, waiting to be found. They ask, "Who am I?" as if there's a true self hidden beneath layers of social conditioning, waiting to be revealed if they could just dig deep enough. Successful people know something radically different. Identity isn't something you discover. It's something you construct deliberately and consciously. Your identity is not a fixed thing you were born with, encoded in your DNA, or determined by your childhood experiences. It's a story you tell yourself about yourself, and more importantly, it's a story you can rewrite at any moment you choose. The game successful people play is fundamentally different from the game most people play. Most people ask themselves, "Who am I?" They look backward at their history, their past actions, their established patterns of behavior. They examine what they've done and conclude that's who they are. I'm not a morning person because they've never been a morning person. I'm not good at public speaking because they've always been anxious about presentations. I'm not entrepreneurial because they've always worked for someone else. Each backward glance at their history cements them more firmly into the identity created by their past. Successful people ask a completely different question: who am I becoming? This subtle shift in phrasing creates a profound shift in psychology. When you ask, "Who am I becoming?" you're looking forward rather than backward. You're treating your identity as malleable, as under construction, as a project rather than a discovery. This gives you permission to change, to grow, to evolve, to shed old patterns that no longer serve you. You're not trapped by your history. You're liberated by your potential. Successful people live in this forward-looking identity space continuously. They see themselves as perpetual works in progress. This doesn't mean they lack a stable sense of self. Rather, they maintain a stable core of values and purposes while holding their surface identity lightly enough to modify it as needed. They can say, I'm not yet someone who exercises consistently, but I'm becoming that person without experiencing cognitive dissonance. The present state and the future state can coexist in their self-concept. But here's where the Identity Forge reveals its true power, the mechanism that makes it devastatingly effective. Successful people don't just think about who they're becoming. They act as if they already are that person. This is the real secret, the practical application that transforms abstract potential into concrete reality. They embody their future identity in their present actions. If they're becoming a successful entrepreneur, they don't wait until they've achieved success to start making decisions like a successful entrepreneur. They make those decisions today, right now, in their current circumstances. They ask, what would the successful entrepreneur I'm becoming do in this situation? Then they do that thing. If they're becoming a master craftsman, they don't wait until they've achieved mastery to approach their work with a master's dedication. They bring that dedication to today's practice session right now at their current skill level. This creates a powerful feedback loop that accelerates transformation. The actions reinforce the identity. When you act like the person you're becoming, you generate evidence for yourself that you are that person. This evidence makes the identity feel more real, which makes it easier to take aligned actions, which generates more evidence. The loop spirals upward, pulling you toward your desired identity. Meanwhile, most people are trapped in the opposite loop. They wait to act like their desired identity until they feel like they've earned it, until they've already achieved it. But since they're not taking the actions, they never generate the evidence that would make them feel like that person. So they continue not taking the actions. The loop spirals downward or remains stuck in place. Mind Game 4, the Failure Reframing Protocol. The fourth, silent mind game, addresses one of the most emotionally charged aspects of the success journey: the failure reframing protocol. Here's a truth that sounds like a motivational platitude until you examine the statistics and realize it's literally accurate. Successful people fail more than unsuccessful people. This isn't about them having better luck or more opportunities that offset their failures. It's about the absolute quantity of failures. They fail more often, more spectacularly, more publicly than people who never achieve significant success. The difference is not in the quantity of failure, but in how failure gets processed psychologically. This distinction is everything. Most people experience failure as evidence of personal inadequacy, evidence that they made a fundamental mistake, evidence that they should quit while they're behind and avoid further embarrassment. Failure confirms their deepest fears about themselves. It activates the inner critic that says, "See, I knew you couldn't do it. You're not good enough. You never were." Successful people experience failure as data, not as a commentary on their worth as human beings, but as information that informs their next attempt. What variables did we not account for? What assumptions turned out to be wrong? What approaches worked partially, but need refinement? What do we need to change in our strategy? Failure reveals hidden aspects of reality that were invisible before the attempt. It's valuable specifically because it brings previously unknown information to light. This reframing isn't merely semantic gameplaying, it's neurological. The difference in interpretation triggers completely different neural pathways with completely different biochemical cascades. When you frame failure as evidence of personal inadequacy, your brain activates threat response systems. Your amygdala, the ancient part of your brain responsible for detecting and responding to danger, takes over. Cortisol and adrenaline flood your system. Your heart rate increases. Your muscles tense. Your digestion shuts down. You move into fight-or-flight mode. Here's the problem. Fight-or-flight mode is evolutionarily designed for physical survival in the face of immediate threats. It's optimized for simple binary choices: run from the predator, or fight it. It's not designed for complex problem-solving, creative thinking, or strategic planning. When your amygdala is in control, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for sophisticated reasoning and executive function, essentially goes offline. You literally cannot think clearly when your brain interprets failure as a threat. But when you frame failure as data, something completely different happens neurologically. Your brain stays in exploratory mode. Your prefrontal cortex remains active and engaged. You can think clearly, creatively, strategically. You can analyze what happened with curiosity rather than judgment. You can identify patterns, test hypotheses, generate alternative approaches. You remain in the cognitive state necessary for learning and growth. Successful people have trained themselves to interrupt the automatic emotional response to failure. This training is crucial and difficult. The automatic response is powerful, wired deep in our evolutionary history, but it can be interrupted through conscious practice. In the critical moment between failing and reacting, they insert a conscious choice about interpretation. This pause is where freedom lives. In that gap, they ask, what can this teach me? What variable did I miss? What do I need to adjust? What's the experiment I should run next? This single habit, practiced consistently over time, creates an entirely different relationship with risk and experimentation. While most people become more conservative after failure, pulling back from risks to avoid future pain, successful people become more calibrated. They don't stop taking risks, they take better risks. They take more informed risks. Each failure upgrades their model of reality, making their future attempts more sophisticated and effective. Mind Game 5, the Energy Economy Optimization. The fifth silent mind game revolutionizes how you approach productivity and achievement. The energy economy optimization. Most people, when they think about success and productivity, think in terms of time management. They buy planners, they use productivity apps, they optimize their schedules, they try to squeeze more activities into each day. They treat time as the limiting resource. Successful people think about achievement in fundamentally different terms. They think about energy management. Here's why this distinction matters profoundly. Time is fixed. You get 24 hours in a day, exactly the same as every other human being. No amount of optimization can give you more time, but energy is variable. The quality of energy you bring to each hour determines what you can accomplish during that hour. A single hour of high-quality, focused, peak-state energy is worth 10 hours of distracted, depleted, low-energy effort, perhaps more. Think about this concretely. Consider an hour when you're well-rested, mentally sharp, emotionally balanced, and fully focused on a challenging task. You're in flow state. Time disappears. You're producing high-quality work effortlessly. You solve problems elegantly. You make connections between ideas that seemed unrelated. In that 1 hour, you might accomplish what would otherwise take you an entire day of scattered, low-energy effort. Now, consider an hour when you're exhausted, mentally foggy, emotionally drained, and trying to force yourself through the same task. You read the same paragraph 5 times without absorbing it. You start working on something, get distracted, forget what you were doing. You make mistakes that you'll have to fix later. You might spend that entire hour and accomplish almost nothing of value. Same amount of time. Radically different outputs. The difference is energy quality. Successful people obsessively optimize their energy levels. They understand that willpower is not some infinite resource that weak people just don't have enough of. It's a depletable resource that needs to be managed strategically, like fuel in a tank. Every decision you make, every temptation you resist, every impulse you override depletes your willpower reserves slightly. This is why successful people structure their days around their natural energy rhythms. They identify when their energy is naturally highest, what chronobiologists call their chronotype. Some people are genuinely most alert and capable in the early morning. Others peak in mid-afternoon or evening. Rather than fighting these natural rhythms, successful people align their most important cognitive work with their peak energy windows. They protect their sleep like it's sacred because they understand that sleep is when the body and brain consolidate learning, repair cellular damage, clear metabolic waste from neural tissue, and reset neurotransmitter systems. Consistently poor sleep doesn't just make you tired. It impairs cognitive function, emotional regulation, immune response, and metabolic health. It's not weakness or laziness to prioritize sleep. It's strategic energy management. They understand that saying no to energy-draining activities is not selfish but necessary for sustained high performance. Every commitment you make is an energy commitment, not just a time commitment. Spending time with people who drain your energy, engaging in activities that feel obligatory rather than meaningful, maintaining relationships out of guilt rather than genuine connection. All of these drain your energy reserves and leave less available for what truly matters. But there's a deeper level to the energy economy optimization that reveals even more sophisticated understanding. Successful people have figured out which activities generate energy and which activities deplete it. This varies from person to person based on personality, values, and natural inclinations, but the principle is universal. Some activities, even though they require effort and can be tiring in the moment, leave you feeling more energized overall than when you started. These are often activities aligned with your values that provide a sense of meaning and purpose that allow you to use your strengths and capabilities. After doing them, you feel tired but satisfied, drained but fulfilled. You've expended energy, but you feel more alive. Other activities, even though they're passive and don't require much effort, leave you feeling drained and depleted. Scrolling social media for an hour feels easy in the moment, but often leaves you feeling worse. Watching television can be relaxing, but extended viewing often leaves you feeling dull and unmotivated. Spending time with people you don't genuinely enjoy out of obligation is emotionally exhausting. Successful people ruthlessly audit their lives for these energy vampires and systematically eliminate them. They structure their days to maximize time spent in energy-generating activities while minimizing energy-draining activities. This creates an upward spiral of increasing energy availability, which enables more ambitious goals, which generates more fulfillment, which creates more energy. Mind Game 6. The Narrative Control Doctrine. The sixth silent mind game addresses perhaps the most pervasive and invisible aspect of mental life, the narrative control doctrine. Every human being is constantly, continuously telling themselves stories. Stories about what just happened, what it means, what will happen next, what kind of person they are, what the world is like. This internal narration never stops. It's running in the background of consciousness every waking moment. Most people don't realize they're doing this. The stories feel like reality rather than interpretation. The narration feels like objective observation rather than creative construction. They don't hear the voice of the narrator because they're completely identified with it. They think the story is what happened, not realizing that what happened is an event, and the story is their interpretation of that event. Successful people have become aware of their internal narrator through practices like meditation, journaling, therapy, or simply repeated self-reflection. They've developed the ability to observe their own mental narration. They can hear themselves telling stories and recognize that they're stories rather than facts. And here's the crucial part. Once you become aware of the narrator, you can learn to direct it. Let me illustrate with a concrete example. Two people experience the identical event they deliver a business pitch to potential investors, and after a thorough presentation and Kunda session, the investors decline to fund the project. Same event, same outcome, but what happens next psychologically diverges completely based on the narrative each person constructs. The first person's internal narrator says, "They rejected me. My idea isn't good enough. I'm not cut out for entrepreneurship. I knew I didn't have what it takes. This proves I should just get a regular job and stop fooling myself that I could build something significant." Successful entrepreneurs probably don't face rejection like this. I'm clearly not one of them. The second person's internal narrator says, "That pitch didn't land with that particular investor. They're focused on a different sector than I realized, so the fit wasn't right. I need to refine my presentation in the financial projections section where they seemed confused. I should find investors who specifically focus on this industry and have a track record of funding early-stage projects. This was valuable practice and revealed some weaknesses in my pitch that I can now address." Same event, completely different story. Completely different emotional impact, completely different subsequent behavior. The first person is now emotionally deflated, questioning their fundamental capabilities, and likely to either give up or approach the next pitch with diminished confidence and enthusiasm. The second person has extracted lessons, maintained their sense of agency, and is actively planning improved future attempts. Neither of these narratives is objectively true or false. The event itself is simply what happened. A pitch was delivered, investors chose not to fund it. Everything else is interpretation, story, narrative construction. But the consequences of choosing one narrative versus the other are profound and concrete. One narrative leads to cessation of effort. The other leads to refined strategy and continued action. Successful people have realized, often through painful experience, that they can choose their narratives. When something negative happens, they consciously construct empowering interpretations. This is not delusional thinking. It's not denial of reality. It's not toxic positivity that refuses to acknowledge real challenges. It's recognition that there are multiple valid interpretations of any event, and choosing the interpretation that preserves agency and possibility is a strategic choice about your psychological state and future behavior. They develop a habit of asking themselves, what's a way to frame this event that keeps me moving forward? What's the story I can tell about this that serves my growth, rather than reinforcing limitation? They become conscious narrators of their own life story, rather than passive recipients of whatever story their brain automatically generates. Mind Game 7, the discomfort inoculation practice. The seventh silent mind game inverts one of the most deeply ingrained human tendencies, the discomfort inoculation practice. Successful people have developed a counterintuitive, almost paradoxical relationship with discomfort. While most people organize their lives around avoiding discomfort, successful people actively seek it out, not because they enjoy suffering or possess some masochistic streak, but because they understand a fundamental principle of growth. Adaptation only happens at the edge of capability. When you're comfortable, by definition, you're operating well within your current capabilities. You're doing things you already know how to do. You're not being challenged, and when you're not being challenged, you're not growing. Comfort is the enemy of progress. Comfort is the seductive trap that keeps people stuck at their current level indefinitely. Consider how adaptation works biologically. When you lift weights, you create microscopic tears in your muscle fibers. This is uncomfortable, even painful. Your body experiences this as damage and responds by repairing the tears and building the muscles slightly stronger to handle similar stress in the future. If you never stressed your muscles beyond their current capacity, they would never grow. The discomfort is not an unfortunate side effect of growth. It's the trigger that causes growth. The same principle applies psychologically. When you attempt something beyond your current skill level, it creates psychological discomfort, anxiety, frustration, self-doubt, the feeling of being overwhelmed. Your mind experiences this as aversive and wants to retreat to familiar, comfortable territory. But if you can persist through that discomfort, your capabilities expand. You develop new skills, new confidence, new neural pathways. The discomfort triggers the growth. But here's the sophisticated part that separates successful people from those who simply push themselves randomly. Successful people don't just expose themselves to any difficulty. They strategically calibrate their discomfort exposure. They understand the crucial difference between productive discomfort and destructive discomfort. Productive discomfort exists in what developmental psychologists call the zone of proximal development. This is the sweet spot, just beyond your current capability level. It's challenging enough to require you to stretch, to try new strategies, to push your limits. But it's not so far beyond your capability that you're completely overwhelmed and unable to function effectively. In this zone, you're uncomfortable but capable. You're challenged but not crushed. Destructive discomfort exists outside this zone, in territory so far beyond your current capabilities that you can't effectively engage with the challenge. This doesn't produce growth, it produces trauma, shutdown, learned helplessness. Attempting a marathon when you've never run more than a mile isn't productive discomfort. It's likely to result in injury and discouragement. Successful people spend the majority of their time in the zone of proximal development. They've learned to recognize the feeling of productive discomfort, and instead of retreating from it, they lean into it. They've reframed the emotional signal of difficulty from danger, stop, to growth opportunity, engage. This is a radical rewiring of ancient survival programming. Your nervous system evolved over millions of years in environments where discomfort usually signaled genuine danger. Physical discomfort meant injury or illness. Social discomfort meant potential rejection from the tribe, which could be fatal when humans lived in small groups. The automatic response to discomfort is avoidance, withdrawal, retreat to safety. Successful people have overridden this programming through conscious, repeated practice. They've gradually expanded their window of tolerance for discomfort. They've taught their nervous system, through repeated exposure and successful navigation of challenging situations, that discomfort doesn't equal danger. It often signals opportunity. This requires consistent practice because the evolutionary programming is powerful and persistent. But over time, with enough repetitions, you can literally rewire your automatic responses. They develop practices for deliberately exposing themselves to controlled discomfort, cold showers, intense physical training, public speaking, difficult conversations, ambitious projects that push their capabilities, any activity that requires them to move beyond their comfort zone while remaining within their zone of productive challenge. Each successful navigation of discomfort builds confidence and expands the range of challenges they can take on. Mind Game 8. The Certainty Illusion Dissolution. The 8th silent mind game addresses one of the most fundamental human psychological needs, the certainty illusion dissolution. Most people crave certainty. They want to know how things will turn out before they commit. They want guarantees. They want to eliminate risk. They want assurance that their effort will pay off, that their investment will return positive results, that their path leads somewhere good. This craving for certainty makes evolutionary sense. Our ancestors lived in dangerous environments where uncertainty often meant death. Not knowing if that rustling in the grass was wind or a predator, not knowing if that food was safe to eat, not knowing if that neighboring tribe was friendly or hostile, genuine life or death uncertainties, brains that strongly desired certainty and took action to achieve it, survived. Brains that were comfortable with uncertainty often didn't. But in the modern world, the craving for certainty often becomes counterproductive. Successful people have made peace with uncertainty. More than that, they've learned to operate effectively within uncertainty. They understand that certainty is often an illusion, and the appearance of certainty can actually be more dangerous than acknowledged uncertainty. Here's why this matters. The world is fundamentally uncertain. Variables you cannot control, cannot predict, cannot even see are constantly influencing outcomes. The economy might shift, technology might change, a pandemic might emerge, a competitor might innovate, a key person might leave, regulations might change, random chance might intervene. No amount of planning eliminates these uncertainties. They're intrinsic to a complex, dynamic world. Most people respond to this reality in one of two maladaptive ways. Some respond with paralyzed inaction, waiting for certainty that will never come. They want more information, more assurance, more proof before they'll commit. But since genuine certainty rarely exists for important decisions, they end up never committing. They remain stuck in analysis paralysis, researching and planning but never executing. Life passes them by while they wait for guarantees. Others respond by pretending they have certainty when they don't. They make detailed 5-year plans and convince themselves these plans are reliable predictions of the future. They commit fully to a single path without considering alternatives. This false certainty feels psychologically comfortable but creates brittle strategies that shatter on contact with reality. When their certain plan encounters uncertainty, as it inevitably will, they're unprepared and overwhelmed. Successful people take a third path. They make decisions and take action with incomplete information, acknowledging rather than denying the uncertainty involved. They hold their plans lightly, ready to adapt as new information emerges. They remain flexible rather than rigid, responsive rather than attached. This approach requires developing a particular cognitive skill, probabilistic thinking. Instead of thinking in binaries, will this succeed or fail, yes or no, guaranteed or impossible, successful people think in probabilities. They assess the likelihood of different outcomes based on available information. They recognize that multiple futures are possible and try to evaluate the relative probability of each. They take actions that have positive expected value, even if individual outcomes are uncertain. This is a crucial distinction. If you have a 20% chance of a huge positive outcome and an 80% chance of a small negative outcome, but the magnitude of the positive outcome far exceeds the magnitude of the negative outcome when weighted by probabilities, that's a bet worth taking. Most people avoid it because they focus on the 80% chance of failure. Successful people take it because they understand expected value. They also understand the distinction between process and outcomes. Outcomes are partly determined by controllable factors like strategy, effort, and skill, but they're also influenced by uncontrollable factors like timing, luck, and randomness. You can make an excellent decision, execute perfectly, and still get a bad outcome because randomness intervened. Conversely, you can make a poor decision and get lucky with a good outcome. Successful people focus on process over outcomes because processes are controllable while outcomes often aren't. They ask, did I make the best decision possible with the information available at the time? Did I execute according to my capabilities? If yes, they're satisfied regardless of the outcome. A bad outcome from a good process is just bad luck. They learn what they can and try again. Meanwhile, most people judge their decisions solely by outcomes, which leads to superstitious thinking and poor calibration. 9. The social reality hacking. The ninth silent mind game recognizes something profound about human nature: the social reality hacking. Humans are fundamentally social creatures. We evolved in groups, survived through cooperation, and developed brains specifically optimized for navigating complex social dynamics. Your sense of reality, your beliefs about what's possible, your standards for achievement, your acceptable behaviors, all of these are heavily influenced by the people around you. This happens through multiple psychological mechanisms. Social proof makes us look to others to determine appropriate behavior, especially in ambiguous situations. If everyone around you thinks a particular goal is unrealistic, you'll absorb that belief. Normalization causes behaviors and standards that are common in your social environment to feel normal to you, even if they're exceptional or substandard in broader context. If everyone in your social circle works 50 hours a week, that feels normal. If everyone works 80 hours or 30 hours, those feel normal instead. Most people are victims of these social influence processes. They don't consciously choose their social environment. They inherit it from childhood, from geographic proximity, from circumstantial connections. Then their social environment shapes their beliefs, standards, and behaviors in ways they're not even aware of. They think their beliefs are their own, formed through independent thought, when in reality, they're largely absorbed from their surroundings. Successful people are architects of their social environment, rather than victims of it. They understand that if you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, then choosing those 5 people is one of the most important decisions you'll ever make. They curate their social environment deliberately and strategically. They seek out people who are playing at a higher level than they currently are, not so high that they can't relate or learn, but high enough that it stretches their sense of what's possible. They look for people who have standards that exceed their current standards, pushing them to raise their own bar. They connect with people who see possibilities they don't yet see, expanding their vision of what could be achieved. This isn't networking in the superficial sense of collecting business cards and LinkedIn connections. It's about genuinely surrounding yourself with people whose presence upgrades your own operating system. When you're regularly exposed to people who casually achieve what you consider ambitious goals, your calibration shifts. What seemed exceptional starts to feel achievable. What seemed impossible starts to feel merely difficult. But the social reality hacking goes deeper than just choosing better friends and mentors. Successful people understand that social dynamics follow certain predictable patterns, and these patterns can be influenced. They learn to set frames in conversations, establishing the underlying assumptions and context through which interactions are interpreted. They shape group narratives, guiding how groups think about challenges and opportunities. They create social realities that serve their goals. This isn't manipulation when done ethically, it's leadership. It's understanding that social reality is constantly being constructed through communication and interaction, and being intentional about what you're helping to construct. When a team faces a setback, a leader who frames it as a temporary obstacle that reveals what we need to adjust creates a very different social reality than a leader who frames it as evidence that this project is doomed. Same event, different frame, different collective response. Successful people also understand status dynamics within social hierarchies and navigate them consciously. They recognize when status games are worth playing and when they're distractions. They build social capital deliberately through generosity, competence, and strategic relationship building. They understand that social influence is a form of leverage that amplifies individual effort. Mind Game 10, the meaning manufacturing mechanism. The 10th silent mind game addresses perhaps the most philosophically profound aspect of human existence: the meaning manufacturing mechanism. Here's a truth that's simultaneously liberating and terrifying when you truly internalize it. Nothing inherently means anything. Meaning is not a property of events or objects in the world. It's not discovered through careful observation. Meaning is projected onto the world by conscious beings through interpretation. Think about this carefully. An event occurs. Something happens in physical reality. A business fails. A relationship ends. A project succeeds. A diagnosis is received. The event itself is just what happened. A change in the state of the world. It doesn't come pre-packaged with meaning or significance. The meaning is something you add through interpretation. You can interpret a business failure as evidence of personal inadequacy, proof that you're not cut out for entrepreneurship, a shameful waste of time and resources. Or you can interpret it as valuable education, data about what doesn't work, a necessary step on the path to eventual success. Neither interpretation is objectively true or false. They're both stories you're telling about the event. But the consequences of choosing one interpretation versus the other are enormous and concrete. Most people don't realize they're manufacturing meaning. They experience their interpretations as if they're facts. This job rejection means I'm not good enough. Feels like a statement of fact rather than an interpretation. This illness means I'm being punished, or this success means I'm special. Feel like observations rather than constructions. The meaning feels like it's in the event itself rather than in your mind's interpretation of the event. Successful people have become aware of the meaning-making process. Through philosophical reflection, psychological insight, or painful experience, they've realized that they're constantly assigning meaning to events, and that this assignment is a choice. They can't control what happens to them, but they can control what they decide it means. This awareness gives them tremendous power. They consciously assign meanings that serve their growth and well-being, rather than accepting whatever meanings their brain automatically generates. When something happens, they pause before automatically accepting the first interpretation that arises. They ask, what meaning can I assign to this event that will empower me? What story can I tell about this that will move me forward rather than keeping me stuck? This is perhaps the most powerful of all the silent mind games, because meaning determines emotion, and emotion drives behavior. If you can control the meaning you assign to events, you can control your emotional responses. And if you can control your emotions, you can control your behaviors. And if you can control your behaviors consistently over time, you can control your life outcomes. Consider how this works in practice. Two people receive identical critical feedback on their work. The first person assigns the meaning, this criticism proves I'm not talented, I should give up. This meaning generates emotions of shame, discouragement, and hopelessness. These emotions drive the behavior of withdrawal and cessation of effort. The second person assigns the meaning, this criticism shows me exactly what I need to improve. Someone cared enough to give me detailed feedback. This meaning generates emotions of gratitude and determination. These emotions drive the behavior of renewed effort focused on specific improvements. Successful people become meaning manufacturing machines. They don't wait for events to tell them what things mean. They actively, consciously decide what meanings serve them and assign those meanings deliberately. This isn't self-deception or denial of reality. The event still happened. The facts are acknowledged, but facts and meanings are different categories, and meanings are always chosen, whether consciously or unconsciously. Mind Game 11. The Present Moment Anchoring. The 11th silent mind game resolves an apparent paradox, the present moment anchoring. Throughout this exploration, we've discussed future orientation, delayed gratification, and becoming rather than being, yet successful people have also mastered something that seems contradictory. They're more present than most people, How can you be future-focused and present-focused simultaneously? The answer is subtle but crucial to understand. Successful people are intensely present with whatever they're doing right now, in this moment, but they choose what they're doing based on future considerations. These are separate decisions. Strategy is future-focused. What should I be doing? Execution is present-focused. How fully can I engage with what I'm doing? When they're working, they're fully immersed in the work. Their attention is completely absorbed in the task at hand. They're not thinking about what they'll do later or what they did earlier. They're here, now, doing this thing. When they're resting, they're fully resting, not half resting while checking email and feeling guilty about not working. Fully present with the experience of rest, allowing genuine recovery. Contrast this with how most people operate. They're physically present, but mentally elsewhere. During work, they're thinking about what they'd rather be doing, checking notifications, planning dinner, ruminating about a past interaction. During rest, they're thinking about work they should be doing, feeling anxious about upcoming deadlines, half engaging with whatever they're doing while their mind spins elsewhere. This divided attention is exhausting and ineffective. The cost of this mental fragmentation is enormous. When your attention is split, you're not fully present anywhere. Your work suffers because you're not fully engaged. Your rest doesn't actually restore you because you're not fully resting. You're in a constant state of partial attention, which creates cognitive fatigue and chronic stress. You're everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The mind game of present moment anchoring is about training attention. Your attention naturally wanders. This is not a flaw or weakness. It's how human minds work. Attention is pulled to the past through rumination, replaying conversations, dwelling on regrets. It's pulled to the future through anxiety and planning, imagining scenarios, worrying about outcomes. Left to its own devices, attention rarely stays with the present moment for more than a few seconds before drifting. Successful people have trained their attention to stay with the present task through consistent practice. This is essentially meditation applied to daily life. Every time attention wanders, you notice the wandering and gently bring attention back to the present task. You don't judge yourself for wandering. You just notice and return. Over thousands of repetitions, you develop the capacity to sustain attention. The sustained attention capacity is perhaps the most valuable cognitive skill in the modern world. We live in an environment specifically designed to fracture attention. Notifications, advertisements, infinite scroll, algorithmically optimized content, all competing for your attention. Most people's attention has become so fragmented that they struggle to focus on a single task for even 10 minutes without distraction. Successful people have developed attention as a trained skill rather than leaving it as an untrained capacity. They can focus deeply on complex tasks for extended periods. This deep focus enables flow states, those periods of optimal performance where time seems to disappear and high-quality work emerges effortlessly. Flow states only occur when attention is fully absorbed in a challenging task. Fragmented attention makes flow impossible. They also understand when to use different attentional modes, sometimes broad. Diffuse attention is appropriate, allowing associations and insights to emerge. Sometimes, narrow, focused attention is needed for concentrated problem solving. The key is consciously choosing the attentional mode, rather than having it chosen for you by whatever stimulus is loudest. Mind Game 12, the expectation, recalibration. The 12th silent mind game involves a sophisticated understanding of how expectations shape experience. The expectation recalibration. Most people's expectations are set by their past experiences, their current peer group, and the media they consume. If you grew up in an environment where everyone struggled financially, your baseline expectation for wealth is calibrated to struggle. If everyone around you is overweight and sedentary, your baseline expectation for health and fitness is calibrated to that standard. These expectations feel natural and appropriate because they're what you're familiar with, but they're actually arbitrary baselines that significantly influence both satisfaction and motivation. Your happiness is largely determined not by objective circumstances, but by how those circumstances compare to your expectations. If you expect little and receive something, you're delighted. If you expect much and receive something, you're disappointed, even if that something is objectively good. Successful people understand that expectations are adjustable settings rather than fixed parameters. They strategically adjust expectations in counterintuitive ways depending on the domain. For outcomes they cannot control, they deliberately lower expectations. This doesn't mean pessimism or cynicism. It means not attaching their well-being to specific results that depend partly on factors beyond their control. They hope for the best, but expect nothing in particular. They work hard on a project and genuinely hope it succeeds. But they don't need it to succeed for their sense of self-worth to remain intact. When good things happen, they're genuinely grateful rather than entitled. They experience positive outcomes as bonuses rather than as things they were owed. When things don't work out, they're not devastated because they weren't counting on any particular outcome. This creates psychological resilience. Their emotional state isn't hostage to results. They can take ambitious risks without their well-being depending on success. This paradoxically makes success more likely because they're not paralyzed by fear of failure or distorted by desperate need for success. But for their own effort and standards, they raise expectations dramatically. They expect more from themselves than most people would think reasonable. They hold themselves to standards that would seem punishing or impossible to others. They expect consistent effort, full engagement, continuous improvement, high-quality work, disciplined execution. This creates an interesting dynamic that drives high performance. Low expectations for outcomes that they can't control, combined with high expectations for effort that they can control, equals both exceptional performance and emotional stability. They're doing everything possible to succeed while being psychologically prepared for any outcome. Most people operate with the opposite configuration: high expectations for outcomes, low expectations for effort. They feel entitled to success, promotion, wealth, recognition, but they're unwilling to do what success actually requires. They want the results without the process. This creates chronic dissatisfaction because their expectations for outcomes aren't matched by their willingness to pay the price. The recalibration isn't easy because expectations feel true rather than chosen. If you've always expected outcomes to be a certain way, alternative expectations feel unrealistic. But through conscious practice, you can adjust your baseline expectations. You expose yourself to different reference points. You deliberately practice gratitude for what is rather than disappointment about what isn't. You consciously raise your standards for your own behavior while releasing attachment to specific outcomes. Mind Game 13. The Identity Liquidity Principle. The 13th silent mind game builds on earlier ideas about identity, but adds a crucial dimension: the identity liquidity principle. We discussed how successful people construct rather than discover identity, how they ask, "Who am I becoming?" rather than "Who am I?" But there's another level. Successful people maintain what I call identity liquidity. They hold their identity loosely enough that they can change it when necessary. Most people become invested in a particular identity and then defend that identity even when it stops serving them. The investment happens gradually. You're good at something, so you start identifying as the person who's good at that thing. People recognize you for it. Your social role solidifies around it. Over time, it becomes core to how you see yourself. Then circumstances change. That skill becomes less valuable. That role becomes obsolete. That identity no longer serves you. But you cling to it because releasing it feels like losing yourself. Think about the professional who defines themselves entirely by their career, building their identity around their role and status. Then the industry shifts. The company downsizes. The career becomes obsolete. They can't cope because their entire identity is tied to something that no longer exists. They don't know who they are without that role. Think about the person who built their identity around being right, being the smartest person in the room, always having the answer. They can't admit mistakes because doing so would threaten their core identity. They defend obviously wrong positions because backing down feels like losing themselves. Their need to be right becomes more important than actually getting to truth or effectiveness. Think about the individual who has constructed their identity around being a victim, someone to whom bad things happen. This identity provides certain benefits. It explains why their life isn't working. It generates sympathy from others. It removes responsibility for change. But it traps them in helplessness. They can't acknowledge their agency because doing so would undermine the victim identity they've invested in. These rigid identities are psychological prisons. Once you've committed to an identity and built your self-concept around it, you unconsciously filter information and make choices that reinforce that identity, even when it limits you. Your ego, your sense of self, becomes invested in maintaining the identity regardless of whether it serves your well-being or goals. Successful people maintain enough separation from their identity that they can observe it, evaluate it, and modify it. They think of themselves less as a fixed self and more as a process of self-creation. This doesn't mean they lack a stable sense of self. They maintain continuity in their values, their purposes, their core principles, but their surface identity, the specific roles they play and ways they define themselves, remains fluid. This identity liquidity allows rapid adaptation. When the environment changes, when new opportunities emerge, when old approaches become obsolete, they can change. They're not trapped by, "That's not who I am," or "I've always been this way." They can try on new identities, experiment with different ways of being, evolve into new versions of themselves. When they outgrow an old version of themselves, they can shed it without a crisis. Most people experience identity transitions as painful crises precisely because they're so identified with the old identity. Successful people experience transitions as natural evolution. They're loyal to their values and goals, but flexible about the identity that serves those ends. This liquidity is developed through practices that create space between awareness and identity. Meditation helps you observe thoughts and emotions without being consumed by them, which creates the recognition that you're not your thoughts or emotions. Journaling helps you examine beliefs and identity assumptions explicitly rather than unconsciously operating from them. Therapy or deep introspection helps you see how your identity formed and recognize it as constructed rather than essential. The practice is holding your self-concept lightly, using language like "I currently identify as" rather than "I am," treating identity as a tool that serves your purposes rather than as a truth that defines you. Asking regularly, "Is this identity still serving me?" and being willing to release identities that no longer do. Mind Game 14. The Asymmetric Bets Doctrine. The 14th silent mind game revolutionizes how to think about risk. The asymmetric bets doctrine. Successful people think probabilistically about risk and reward in sophisticated ways. They're constantly scanning for situations where the potential downside is small and limited, but the potential upside is large and potentially unlimited. These are called asymmetric bets, and recognizing and taking them repeatedly is fundamental to intelligent risk-taking. An asymmetric bet has favorable risk-reward ratios. You risk little to potentially gain much. The downside is capped and manageable. The upside is large or unlimited. The probability-weighted expected value is positive, often highly positive. Taking these bets repeatedly, even if individual attempts often fail, produces excellent long-term outcomes. Consider concrete examples. Starting a side business while keeping your job is an asymmetric bet. The downside is limited to the time and modest amount of money you invest, which you can afford to lose. The upside is potentially unlimited if the business succeeds and scales. Even if it fails, you've gained experience and kept your job. The risk-reward ratio is highly favorable. Asking someone you admire for mentorship or advice is an asymmetric bet. The downside is they say no or don't respond, which costs you nothing except brief awkwardness. The upside is you gain access to their knowledge, network, and guidance, which could be transformative. The worst case is you're exactly where you are now. The best case changes your trajectory. Asking for a raise or promotion is an asymmetric bet. The downside is hearing no, which leaves you in your current situation. The upside is significantly more money or responsibility. The risk is minimal. The potential reward is substantial. Yet most people never ask because they fear the discomfort of potential rejection. Publishing your work, sharing your ideas, putting yourself out there in some way is an asymmetric bet. The downside is criticism or indifference, which stings emotionally but doesn't actually harm you. The upside is that your work resonates, builds an audience, creates opportunities you can't currently imagine. The vast majority of successful creative people, entrepreneurs, thought leaders got there by repeatedly putting work out into the world, despite fear of rejection. Successful people have trained themselves to recognize these opportunities and take them repeatedly. They've overcome the psychological barriers that prevent most people from taking asymmetric bets. The barriers are emotional rather than logical. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of looking foolish, fear of judgment. All these fears feel large emotionally, even when the actual downside is objectively small. They've also learned to avoid negatively asymmetric bets, where the downside is large and the upside is limited. Gambling in casinos is a negatively asymmetric bet for most people. The downside is losing money, potentially lots of it. The upside is winning money. But the odds are structured so that expected value is negative. Driving drunk is a negatively asymmetric bet. The downside is death, serious injury, legal consequences. The upside is saving the cost and inconvenience of a taxi. Many common life choices are secretly negatively asymmetric. Staying in an unfulfilling job for security is often negatively asymmetric. The downside is years or decades of life spent unsatisfied, which is huge. The upside is avoiding the discomfort and uncertainty of job searching, which is modest, but it feels safe because the downside is distributed across time and doesn't trigger acute fear the way uncertain change does. Avoiding difficult conversations in relationships is often negatively asymmetric. The downside is relationships deteriorate, resentments build, problems compound. The upside is avoiding momentary discomfort, but the momentary discomfort feels more salient than the long-term deterioration. The key insight is that most people are risk-averse in situations where being risk-averse is actually the risky choice. They avoid positively asymmetric bets because the emotional discomfort of possible rejection or failure feels large, even though the actual downside is small. Meanwhile, they accept negatively asymmetric situations because the downside is distant or distributed rather than immediate and acute. Successful people have recalibrated their risk perception. They've trained themselves to evaluate risk rationally rather than emotionally. They ask, what's the actual worst case if this fails? Can I handle that? What's the potential best case? How probable are different outcomes? What's the expected value? Then they take action based on rational analysis rather than emotional aversion. They've also developed the emotional resilience to handle the downside of asymmetric bets when it occurs. They can be rejected and not be devastated. They can fail publicly and recover. This resilience is what makes it possible to take repeated asymmetric bets because you know you can handle the downside when it happens. Mind Game 15. The Metacognitive Monitoring System. The 15th silent mind game develops perhaps the most powerful capability of human consciousness. The metacognitive monitoring system. Metacognition is thinking about thinking, being aware of your own mental processes as they occur. It's the ability to observe your mind rather than being completely identified with it. Most people are entirely fused with their thoughts. A thought arises in consciousness, and they immediately believe it, identify with it, act on it, become it. There's no gap between the thought arising and it being accepted as truth. If the thought, "I can't do this," appears, they experience themselves as unable to do it. If the thought, "I'm not good enough," appears, they experience themselves as inadequate. The thought and the self are indistinguishable. This complete identification with thought creates enormous psychological suffering and limitation. Your thoughts include many that are simply false, based on outdated information or cognitive distortions. They include limiting beliefs absorbed from childhood. They include fears and insecurities that don't reflect reality. They include harsh self-criticism that you would never direct at another person. If you're completely identified with these thoughts, you're trapped by them. Successful people have developed metacognitive awareness. They've learned to observe thoughts without being consumed by them. This creates a crucial gap, a space between stimulus and response where freedom lives. A limiting thought arises, like, "I can't do this," or "this will never work." But instead of immediately accepting it as truth, they notice it as a thought. "I'm having the thought that I can't do this." This simple reframing creates massive psychological space. It reminds you that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness in which thoughts appear. Thoughts come and go. They arise in consciousness and pass away. You don't have to believe every thought that crosses your mind any more than you have to believe every statement you hear from another person. Once you can observe a thought rather than being it, you can evaluate it. Is this thought true? Is it useful? Does believing this thought move me toward my goals or away from them? If a thought isn't true or useful, you can choose not to invest belief in it. You can choose a different thought that serves you better. This isn't positive thinking or self-deception. You're not denying reality or pretending things are different than they are. You're exercising cognitive flexibility, recognizing that there are multiple ways to think about any situation, and some ways are more useful than others. The practice of developing metacognitive awareness requires consistent attention. You have to repeatedly catch yourself thinking. Notice when you're ruminating about the past or worrying about the future. Observe when you're engaging in self-criticism or comparison. Watch when you're making assumptions or jumping to conclusions. Meditation is the most direct practice for developing this capacity. In meditation, you practice observing your thoughts without engaging with them. Thoughts arise, you notice them, you let them pass. You return attention to the breath or another anchor. This trains the metacognitive muscle, the ability to observe mental activity without being swept away by it. Over time, you develop what I call an internal observer, a part of you that watches the rest of you without judgment. This observer becomes your greatest tool for self-regulation and growth. It notices patterns in your thinking. I often catastrophize in this type of situation, or I tend to be harshly self-critical after mistakes, or I frequently doubt myself right before taking action. These patterns, once observed, can be addressed. You can't change what you're not aware of. But once you notice a pattern through metacognitive monitoring, you can intervene. You can question the pattern, experiment with alternatives, gradually rewire the automatic response. The internal observer also provides emotional regulation. When you can observe an emotion rather than being completely consumed by it, the emotion becomes more manageable. You feel angry, but you also observe yourself feeling angry. This observation creates distance. The anger is there, but you're not completely identified with it. You can feel it without necessarily acting on it. Research in psychology shows that simply naming emotions reduces their intensity. When you can observe and label what you're feeling, I'm experiencing anxiety, or this is frustration, the emotion decreases in power. Metacognitive awareness provides the space to name emotions, which provides some degree of regulation. Mind Game 16, the optionality maximization strategy. The 16th silent mind game involves a sophisticated approach to building resilience and flexibility. The optionality maximization strategy. Successful people structure their lives to maximize options. They understand that in an uncertain and dynamic world, having options is more valuable than having a single optimized path, no matter how good that path appears. Options provide multiple forms of value. First, options provide resilience. If one path becomes blocked, you have alternatives. You're not trapped in a single course of action. If your industry declines, but you've developed skills across multiple domains, you can pivot. If a relationship ends, but you've maintained a broad social network, you're not isolated. If one income stream disappears, but you've cultivated multiple streams, you're not financially devastated. Second, options provide information. You can test different paths without fully committing. You can experiment with various approaches and see which ones gain traction. You can gather data about what works before making irreversible commitments. The option value of information is often greater than the immediate monetary value of any particular choice. Third, options provide negotiating power. When you have alternatives, you can't be trapped or exploited. If you're entirely dependent on one employer, they have enormous power over you. If you have skills that other employers value and savings to survive a transition, you can negotiate from strength. If your business has multiple potential customers, no single customer can dictate terms. Options equal power. This shows up in concrete ways throughout successful people's lives. They develop multiple skills rather than over-specializing in one narrow domain. Specialization can optimize for current conditions, but it minimizes optionality. When conditions change, specialists struggle to adapt. Successful people often have a primary skill where they're highly competent, but they also develop complementary skills that create options. They maintain multiple income streams rather than depending entirely on one employer. This might mean side businesses, investments, consulting, freelance work, royalties, multiple clients rather than one primary one. Each stream is an option. Even if individual streams are small, the portfolio approach creates security. They build diverse networks rather than clustering in one social group or industry. A diverse network provides access to different information, different opportunities, different perspectives. It creates optionality that homogeneous networks don't provide. They save and invest money to maintain financial optionality. Money is crystallized options. With sufficient savings, You can afford to leave a bad situation, invest in opportunities that appear, weather unexpected shocks. Without savings, you're forced to accept whatever circumstances offer. They maintain physical health and fitness to maintain biological optionality. Poor health closes options. It limits what you can do physically, constrains energy levels, increases medical needs and costs. Good health keeps all options open. They maintain relationships and reputation carefully because burning bridges closes social options. You never know when a person or connection might become valuable. Successful people leave relationships positively when possible, because past relationships are future options. Every significant choice is evaluated partly on whether it opens up more choices or closes them down. A decision that optimizes current income but requires moving to a location with few opportunities or learning skills that are only valuable to one employer might be suboptimal from an optionality perspective, even if it maximizes short-term results. Most people inadvertently minimize their optionality. They specialize too narrowly because it seems like the path to expertise. They accept obligations that constrain future choices because the immediate benefit seems worth it. They burn bridges out of anger or carelessness. They spend all their income rather than saving. They let health decline. Then when circumstances change, they have no room to maneuver. They're trapped in suboptimal situations because they've eliminated their alternatives. Successful people play the long game of optionality. They sometimes sacrifice short-term optimization to maintain long-term flexibility. They turn down opportunities that would close too many other options. They invest in capabilities that might not pay off immediately, but that expand their opportunity surface. They guard their optionality jealously because they know that in an uncertain world, options are what allow you to thrive regardless of what happens. The invisible battlefield. There exists a battlefield that operates beyond the reach of human sight, untouched by the chaos of traditional warfare. No smoke clouds the air, no gunfire pierces the silence, no bodies mark the terrain of defeat. Yet this battlefield claims more victories and defeats than any physical conflict in human history. Every single day, without exception, wars of monumental consequence are waged and decided upon this invisible front. This battlefield resides within the architecture of your consciousness, nestled in the intricate neural pathways that illuminate like constellations when you confront a decision. It exists in that infinitesimal gap between stimulus and response, in the microsecond before you choose courage over retreat, action over paralysis, growth over comfort. The individuals who have ascended to extraordinary levels of success, who seem to operate by different rules than ordinary people, have discovered and mastered sophisticated games on this battlefield that the average person remains entirely unaware they're even participating in. These are the silent mind games, and your comprehension of them represents the fundamental dividing line between a life of quiet desperation, where you're constantly reacting to circumstances beyond your control, and a life of intentional mastery, where you architect your own reality through conscious mental processes. Let me share something with you that may disturb your sense of control. At this precise moment, as your eyes scan these words and your brain converts symbols into meaning, your mind is engaged in an elaborate game with your conscious awareness. Deep in your neural circuitry, evaluation systems are determining whether this information poses a threat to your existing worldview, whether it challenges beliefs you've held for so long they feel like extensions of your identity. Your brain is performing complex calculations, weighing whether the energy expenditure required to truly absorb and apply this knowledge justifies the potential payoff. Simultaneously, your mind is running multiple simulation threads, constructing possible futures where you integrate these concepts and transform your life, alongside parallel futures where you dismiss this information and continue along your current trajectory. These mental simulations are occurring with remarkable sophistication, drawing on your accumulated life experiences, your successes and failures, your fears and aspirations. And here's what should truly unsettle you. You're consciously aware of perhaps 1% of this processing. The vast majority operates beneath the surface of your awareness, in the shadows of your subconscious. Most human beings traverse their entire existence as passengers in their own minds. They experience thoughts without questioning their origin. They follow impulses without examining their source. They react to emotions without understanding their mechanism. They make decisions based on patterns established in childhood, never pausing to ask whether those patterns still serve them. Meanwhile, those who achieve extraordinary success have somehow discovered how to transition from passenger to driver. They've learned to observe their own mental processes, to question their automatic responses, to consciously direct their psychological machinery. The question that should consume you is, how did they make this transition, and how can you? Mind Game 17. The status game, transcendence. The 17th silent mind game addresses one of the most powerful and primitive human drives, the status game transcendence. Humans are wired to care about status. This isn't cultural or learned, it's evolutionarily hardwired into our psychology. For millions of years, higher status meant better access to resources, greater influence over group decisions, and superior reproductive opportunities. Brains that cared intensely about status passed on more genes. We're all descendants of status-conscious ancestors. But status games, the pursuit of respect and recognition from others, are often psychological traps that divert energy from genuine achievement. When you're playing for status, you're letting other people define your success. You're playing a game where the goalposts constantly move based on others' opinions. You're subject to rules set by others and scoring determined by others. You've outsourced the measurement of your worth. Most people spend enormous energy on status games without realizing it. They make purchasing decisions based on what will impress others. They choose careers based on prestige rather than fit. They avoid admitting ignorance or mistakes to maintain the appearance of competence. They overwork not because they find the work meaningful, but because they want to be seen as successful. They post on social media to generate validation through likes and comments. They name drop and humble brag. All status-seeking behavior. The problem isn't that status doesn't matter. It does. Status provides real benefits in social navigation, career advancement, and relationship formation. The problem is when status seeking becomes the primary driver of behavior, when external validation becomes more important than internal satisfaction, when appearance trumps substance. Successful people have transcended traditional status games, though this transcendence is often subtle and easily misunderstood. They haven't become indifferent to what others think. They haven't abandoned all concern for reputation or recognition. Rather, they've redefined status for themselves based on their own values and goals, rather than accepting socially prescribed status hierarchies. They measure success by internal standards rather than external validation. They care whether they're growing, whether they're aligned with their values, whether they're making progress toward meaningful goals. These internal metrics become primary, while external recognition becomes secondary. This doesn't mean they're indifferent to all external feedback. They're selective about which others they care about and why. They seek respect from people they respect, feedback from people whose judgment they trust, recognition from communities they value. But they don't need approval from everyone. They don't need strangers to validate their choices. They don't need to impress people whose values they don't share. This selective attention to status allows them to avoid enormous energy drains. Most people waste immense psychological resources trying to impress people who don't matter to them, whose opinions shouldn't affect their choices, whose validation wouldn't actually make them happier, even if received. Successful people redirect this energy toward work that matters to them. The transcendence is psychologically difficult because status seeking is deeply wired. Social comparison happens automatically. When you see someone with more money, more recognition, more followers, more success by some visible metric, your brain automatically performs a status evaluation. You feel either superior or inferior based on the comparison. These feelings arise without conscious choice. Overriding this requires conscious, repeated practice. You have to notice when you're comparing yourself to others and consciously redirect attention. You have to catch yourself seeking validation and ask whether this validation actually serves your deeper goals or just feeds the status-seeking impulse. You have to experience the discomfort of not impressing everyone and accept that discomfort as the price of authenticity. The payoff is enormous. You stop wasting energy on impressing people who don't matter. You stop making decisions based on how they'll look rather than whether they'll work. You become internally directed rather than externally controlled. You play games you choose rather than games society assigns. You define winning by your own criteria. This internal direction is what allows successful people to pursue contrarian paths. When you need social approval, you must stay within acceptable bounds. You can't deviate too far from what your reference group considers normal or appropriate. But when you've transcended the need for broad approval, when you're measuring success by internal standards, you're free to pursue paths that others consider weird, risky, or inadvisable. Many breakthrough achievements come from people who were willing to be misunderstood or dismissed by conventional opinion. Mind Game 18. The Compound Effect Consciousness. The 18th silent mind game embodies perhaps the most underappreciated principle of achievement: the compound effect consciousness. Most people vastly underestimate the power of small, consistent actions accumulated over long periods of time. They're looking for breakthrough moments, dramatic transformations, overnight success. They want the big win, the sudden change, the revolutionary shift that reorients everything instantly. This desire for dramatic transformation is understandable but counterproductive. It leads people to overlook and undervalue the small, seemingly insignificant actions that actually produce most meaningful change. Successful people understand that most real achievement is the result of the compound effect, small improvements stacked repeatedly over long periods, creating exponential rather than linear growth. Consider the mathematics of improvement. If you improve by just 1% each day, after a year you're not 365% better. Due to compounding, you're actually 37 times better. Conversely, if you decline by 1% each day, after a year you're nearly at zero. Small differences in daily actions create massive differences in long-term outcomes through the power of compounding. Think about concrete examples that make this principle tangible. Reading 10 pages every day doesn't feel like much. It's such a small action that it seems almost trivial. But over a year, that's roughly 12 books, assuming average book length. Over a decade, that's 120 books. Reading 120 books in a domain puts you in the most educated fraction of 1% of humanity in that domain. You've accumulated more knowledge than most graduate degree programs provide, all from 10 pages per day. Saving 10% of your income doesn't feel significant, especially when your income is modest. The amount seems too small to matter, but compound interest works magic over time. If you save 10% of a modest income starting in your 20s and invest it with average returns, you'll have substantial wealth by retirement. The vast majority of wealth is created not through high income, but through consistent saving and the compound growth of investments over decades. Working out for 30 minutes daily doesn't create visible change immediately. After the first session, you look exactly the same. After a week, essentially no visible difference. This is discouraging for people seeking dramatic transformation, but over months, visible changes emerge. Over years, your body completely transforms. You build strength, endurance, flexibility. You prevent disease. You extend healthy lifespan, all from 30 minutes daily. Writing 500 words per day seems like an insignificant amount for an aspiring writer, but over a year, that's nearly 200,000 words, enough for 2 full-length novels. Over a decade, that's 2 million words, enough for 20 books. Most professional writers don't publish 20 books in their entire career. The pattern holds across virtually every domain. Small, consistent actions compound into extraordinary results given sufficient time. But there's a crucial psychological challenge. Results lag behind actions significantly. This lag is what causes most people to give up before compounding can work its magic. When you start a new habit or practice, you're doing the action but not yet seeing results. The first days and weeks show no visible progress. You're investing effort without apparent return. This is psychologically difficult. Your brain wants immediate feedback. It wants to see that effort is producing results. Successful people have internalized the mathematics of compounding deeply enough that they trust the process even when they can't see immediate results. They understand that there's always a lag between action and result. They've made peace with the fact that the most important effects of their daily actions won't be visible for months or years. This trust allows consistency, and consistency is where the real power lies. Intensity doesn't compound the same way consistency does. Working out intensely for 5 hours once per week is less effective than working out moderately for 30 minutes daily. The daily practice creates consistent stimulus for adaptation. The body never fully deconditions between sessions. The habit becomes automatic rather than requiring willpower each time. Most people do the opposite. They get inspired and go hard for a period, then burn out, or get distracted and stop. They cycle between intense effort and no effort. This cycling prevents compounding. You're constantly restarting from baseline rather than building on previous progress. It's like trying to get a fire started by lighting a match, letting it burn out, lighting another match hours later, repeating endlessly. The fire never catches because you're not maintaining consistent fuel. Successful people show up consistently, even when they don't feel like it, even when it doesn't seem to matter, even when results aren't yet visible. They trust that if they maintain the practice long enough, compound effects will produce extraordinary outcomes. They play long-term games with long-term people, as the saying goes. They've also learned to focus on the process rather than fixating on distant goals. Goals are important for direction, but day-to-day focus on the goal is often counterproductive. If your goal is to lose 50 pounds, thinking about those 50 pounds every day while you're still at the beginning is discouraging. You're constantly reminded of the gap between current reality and desired outcome. Instead, successful people focus on the daily process. Today, I'm going to make healthy food choices. Today, I'm going to exercise for 30 minutes. Today, I'm going to write 500 words. The focus is on what they can control today, the actions that will compound over time. The goal is the direction, but the process is what actually gets walked. This process focus also makes the journey more sustainable and even enjoyable. If you're focused only on the distant goal, the present moment is always insufficient, always just a means to an end. But if you're focused on the process, you can find satisfaction in doing the thing itself. The writing becomes enjoyable. The workout becomes energizing. The learning becomes fascinating. The process becomes its own reward, which makes consistency effortless rather than requiring constant willpower. Mind Game 19. The Emotional Regulation Mastery. The 19th Silent Mind Game addresses one of the most critical but underdeveloped skills for most people, the emotional regulation mastery. Emotions are information, valuable data about how you're interpreting situations and what matters to you. But emotions are not instructions. They don't tell you what to do. They tell you something about your internal state and interpretation. But the appropriate response to an emotion is a separate question that requires conscious choice. Most people are at the mercy of their emotions. They experience an emotion and immediately act on the impulse that emotion generates. They feel angry, so they lash out angrily. They feel afraid, so they retreat from the feared situation. They feel excited, so they jump in impulsively without thinking. They feel ashamed, so they hide and withdraw. The emotion arises and behavior follows automatically without conscious mediation. This emotional reactivity creates enormous problems. Anger leads to saying things you regret, damaging relationships, making poor decisions. Fear prevents you from taking necessary risks, pursuing opportunities, facing challenges that would lead to growth. Impulsive excitement leads to rash commitments, poor investments, unsustainable choices. Shame creates isolation and prevents you from seeking help or connection when you need it most. Successful people have developed emotional regulation. They feel emotions fully, acknowledging and experiencing them rather than suppressing or denying them. But they choose their responses consciously rather than reacting automatically. They've learned to pause between feeling and action. In that pause, they can ask, what is this emotion telling me? Is the action this emotion is prompting me toward aligned with my goals and values? Often the answer is no. Fear might be telling you that something involves risk, but if it's a calculated risk with positive expected value, the right response is to proceed despite the fear, rather than letting fear determine your choice. Anger might be telling you that a boundary was violated, or that something important to you is threatened, but lashing out might damage an important relationship or create worse problems than the original transgression. The emotion contains valid information, but the automatic behavioral response it triggers isn't necessarily the wise choice. Understanding what emotions are telling you requires emotional literacy, the ability to identify and name your emotional states accurately. Research by psychologist Lisa Feldman Barrett and others shows that emotional granularity, the ability to make fine-grained distinctions between emotional states, is associated with better emotional regulation and mental health. Most people have relatively low emotional granularity. They can identify broad categories. I feel bad. I feel good. I feel stressed. But successful emotional regulation requires more precision. Are you anxious about a specific outcome, frustrated by lack of progress, disappointed by unmet expectations, resentful about unfair treatment, overwhelmed by too many demands? Each of these is different and suggests different responses. When you can accurately name what you're feeling, the emotion becomes more manageable. Studies show that the simple act of labeling an emotion reduces its intensity. When you move from "I feel terrible" to "I'm experiencing disappointment because my expectations weren't met," the emotion becomes less overwhelming. You've created some psychological distance through the act of observation and labeling. This labeling requires practice because it needs to happen in real time when you're actually experiencing the emotion. Most people reflect on emotions only after the fact, if at all. Successful people develop the habit of checking in with themselves throughout the day. What am I feeling right now? What's underneath that surface emotion? Often surface emotions mask deeper ones. Anger often masks hurt. Anxiety often masks feeling unprepared or out of control. Once you've identified what you're feeling, the next step is choosing your response. This requires separating the validity of the emotion from the appropriateness of the automatic behavioral response. The emotion is always valid in the sense that you're genuinely feeling it. Emotions aren't right or wrong. They're experiences, but validity of the emotion doesn't mean the automatic response is appropriate or beneficial. You can acknowledge the emotion while choosing a different behavior. I'm feeling angry about this situation, and that anger is telling me something important about my boundaries. But rather than lashing out, I'm going to take some time to cool down and then have a calm conversation about what happened. The emotion is honored, the information it contains is recognized, but the behavior is consciously chosen. This requires developing emotional resilience, the capacity to experience difficult emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Most people have limited tolerance for emotional discomfort. When difficult emotions arise, they immediately seek to escape them through distraction, substance use, compulsive behavior, or avoidance. This prevents them from developing the capacity to sit with discomfort. Successful people have gradually expanded their window of tolerance through repeated exposure to emotional discomfort. They've learned that emotions, no matter how intense, are temporary. They rise, peak, and subside like waves. If you can simply experience an emotion without reacting to it or trying to escape it, it will naturally diminish over time. This understanding removes some of the fear around difficult emotions. They've also learned to separate emotional intensity from danger. A strong emotion feels urgent and important in the moment, but intensity doesn't equal validity or importance. You can feel intensely upset about something relatively minor. You can feel strongly drawn to something that isn't actually good for you. Emotional intensity is information about how strongly you're reacting, not information about how important something objectively is. The practice of emotional regulation is ongoing and never complete. Emotions are powerful, physiologically rooted, and deeply connected to survival systems. You can't think your way out of emotions or reason them away, but you can develop the capacity to experience them without being controlled by them, to extract their information without following their automatic impulses, to choose responses that serve your long-term well-being, even when emotions push toward short-term reactions. Mind Game 20. The Leverage Identification Instinct. The 20th silent mind game embodies one of the most important strategic principles, the leverage identification instinct. Successful people are obsessed with leverage. They're constantly asking themselves, where can I apply effort that will produce disproportionate results? They understand at a deep level that not all effort is equal. An hour spent on a high-leverage activity can produce 10 times, 100 times, even 1,000 times more value than an hour spent on a low-leverage activity. This principle seems obvious when stated explicitly, but most people don't actually operate according to it. They confuse effort with progress. They mistake being busy for being effective. They do what's urgent rather than what's important. They work hard but on the wrong things, then wonder why years of effort haven't produced the results they expected. Leverage shows up in multiple forms. Skill leverage means developing capabilities that multiply the value of other capabilities. Learning to communicate clearly is leveraged because it enhances everything else you do. Learning to learn efficiently is leveraged because it accelerates every other skill acquisition. Learning to think clearly, to make good decisions, to manage your psychology, all highly leveraged skills that improve everything else. System leverage means building systems that continue producing value after the initial work. Writing a book is leveraged because you write it once, but it can impact thousands of readers over decades. Creating a course or training program is leveraged because you develop it once, but it can teach thousands of people. Building software is leveraged because you code it once, but millions of people can use it. These contrast with trading time for money in a linear way, where you're paid once for work done once. People leverage means working with and through other people. A manager who develops 10 people is more leveraged than an individual contributor, no matter how skilled. A leader who inspires hundreds or thousands multiplies their impact far beyond what they could accomplish individually. A mentor who guides someone to great achievement gets leverage through that person's success. Financial leverage means using capital to amplify returns. This is the most commonly understood form of leverage, but also the riskiest because it can amplify losses as well as gains. Debt used to purchase income-producing assets can be powerful leverage if used carefully. Investment capital allows you to benefit from other people's work and from compound growth. Network leverage means building relationships that create opportunities and accelerate progress. A well-connected person can make an introduction that changes someone's trajectory. A diverse network provides access to information, resources, and opportunities that would otherwise remain hidden. Each relationship is potential leverage. The key insight is that leverage points exist in every situation, but they're not equally distributed. Most actions have linear or even negative returns. They consume resources without producing proportional value. A small number of actions have extraordinary leverage, producing far more value than the effort invested. Successful people develop an instinct for identifying leverage points. Before applying effort, they pause to ask, is this high leverage or low leverage? Is there a way to accomplish this with less effort or more impact? What's the bottleneck that's constraining progress? What's the one thing that would make everything else easier or unnecessary? This last question, popularized by Gary Keller in The One Thing, is particularly powerful. In any complex situation with multiple challenges and opportunities, there's usually one action that has cascading positive effects. Identifying that action, that leverage point, is more valuable than working harder on everything. Sometimes the highest leverage activity is counterintuitive. It might be rest when you're exhausted rather than pushing through. It might be delegating rather than doing it yourself, even though you could do it faster. It might be learning a new skill rather than continuing to rely on existing skills. It might be saying no to opportunities rather than saying yes to everything. Leverage also appears in identifying and fixing bottlenecks. In any system or process, there's typically one constraint that limits overall throughput. Optimizing anything other than the bottleneck has limited impact, but fixing the bottleneck can dramatically improve the entire system. Successful people look for these constraints and focus effort there rather than diffusing effort across everything. Most people work hard, but on the wrong things because they haven't developed leverage awareness. They respond to whatever seems urgent. They do tasks that are easy or familiar rather than important. They fail to distinguish between motion and progress. They're busy, exhausted, working long hours. But years later, they haven't made significant progress toward their important goals. Successful people think strategically before working tactically. They zoom out to see the bigger picture, identify leverage points, then zoom back in to execute on high leverage activities. They're comfortable doing less overall work if that work is more highly leveraged. They understand that working half as much on things that are 10 times more leveraged produces 5 times the results. This requires overriding psychological impulses toward visible productivity. It feels good to check tasks off a list, to be visibly busy, to produce tangible outputs. It feels uncomfortable to spend time thinking, planning, strategizing, which doesn't produce immediate visible results. But the thinking time, if it identifies higher leverage approaches, produces far more value than additional execution time. The leverage instinct also means knowing when to quit activities that aren't producing sufficient returns. Most people persist at low-leverage activities far too long because they've already invested significant effort and don't want that effort to feel wasted. This is sunk cost fallacy. The past investment is gone regardless. The question is whether future investment in this activity is the best use of resources. Successful people are willing to quit low-leverage activities even after significant investment if they identify higher leverage alternatives. They're optimizing for future returns, not protecting past investments. This flexibility allows them to rapidly shift resources toward the highest leverage opportunities as circumstances change. Mind Game 21, the Death Awareness Advantage. The final silent mind game confronts the ultimate constraint on human existence: the death awareness advantage. Successful people maintain an awareness of mortality that most people desperately suppress. They know, with visceral certainty, rather than abstract acknowledgement, that their time is finite. They know that one day, perhaps tomorrow, perhaps in decades, they'll run out of chances. Chances to do what they want to do, to become who they want to become, to contribute what they want to contribute, to experience what they want to experience. This awareness doesn't make them morbid, depressed, or pessimistic. Paradoxically, it makes them more alive, more present, more focused, more urgent. When you truly internalize that your time is limited, that you have a finite number of days remaining on Earth, trivial concerns fall away. You stop caring what random strangers think of you. You stop holding grudges that waste emotional energy. You stop doing things that don't matter out of obligation or social pressure. You start making choices based on what you actually want your life to stand for. Most people know intellectually that they will die but don't feel it emotionally. Death remains abstract, distant, something that happens to other people, or in the far future. This allows them to live as if they have infinite time. They procrastinate important things. They waste years in situations they hate. They delay pursuing dreams until conditions are perfect. They maintain toxic relationships because they imagine they'll have time to fix them later or that ending them can wait. They put off conversations they need to have, trips they want to take, risks they want to pursue. Then suddenly, decades have passed. Opportunities that were available are gone. Loved ones have died. Health has declined. The window for certain experiences has closed. They realize, with crushing regret, that they've spent their finite time on things that didn't matter while neglecting what did. But by then, it's too late to recover the lost years. Death awareness prevents this tragedy. It clarifies values and priorities like nothing else. When you genuinely contemplate your mortality, when you imagine being on your deathbed looking back at your life, many things that seem important now reveal themselves as trivial. Other things that you've been neglecting reveal themselves as essential. Successful people use this awareness actively. They don't simply acknowledge mortality once and forget about it. They regularly contemplate death as a tool for clarifying choices. Many traditions include practices for this. The Stoics meditated on death daily. Buddhist monks contemplate impermanence. Various wisdom traditions include memento mori, remember that you will die. The practice isn't about being morbid or depressed. It's about clarity. They ask themselves, if I had 6 months left to live, what would I do differently? What would I stop doing immediately? What would I start doing? Who would I reconnect with? What would I let go of? What would I finally pursue that I've been putting off? These aren't just hypothetical questions. The answers reveal what actually matters to you versus what you're doing out of habit, obligation, or other people's expectations. Then the practice is to use these answers to guide current choices. You don't actually have only 6 months, but you also don't have infinite time. So why continue doing things you'd immediately stop if time were clearly limited? Why not start doing things you'd prioritize if you knew time was short? This creates urgency without anxiety. Urgency because you recognize that time is actually scarce and valuable, but not anxiety because you're actively choosing to spend your time on what matters, rather than drifting through days spent on things you don't value. Death awareness also provides perspective on setbacks and failures. When you contemplate mortality, most failures reveal themselves as relatively insignificant. That business that failed, that relationship that ended, that embarrassing moment, that rejection in the face of eventual death. These things matter much less than they seem to matter in the moment. This perspective is liberating. It allows taking risks without being paralyzed by fear of failure. Additionally, death awareness can deepen appreciation for life. When you recognize that this moment, this experience, this interaction is part of your finite allotment, it becomes more precious. The ordinary becomes extraordinary because you recognize it won't last forever. Time with loved ones becomes more valuable. Simple pleasures become more savored. Even challenges can be appreciated as part of the finite experience of being alive. The contemplation of death also prompts questions about legacy and meaning. What do you want to leave behind? How do you want to be remembered? What impact do you want to have had? These questions can guide major life choices about career, relationships, how you spend time, what you create, how you treat people. Successful people understand they're playing a finite game with full awareness of the rules. They know the clock is running. They know the game will end. This knowledge doesn't paralyze them. It motivates them. It clarifies what's worth playing for. It reveals that the scoreboard most people fixate on, money, status, material possessions, matters much less than the experience of playing, the growth achieved, the relationships built, the contribution made. Conclusion: choosing your game. These 21 silent mind games are not tactics or tricks or life hacks. They're fundamental reorganizations of how you relate to your own mind, to reality, to time, to other people, to yourself. They represent different ways of thinking, feeling, and acting than most people habitually employ. They're difficult to implement because they require going against evolutionary programming, social conditioning, and patterns established over years or decades. But they're also available to anyone willing to do the work. These games aren't restricted to some special category of human with genetic advantages or privileged backgrounds. They're learnable skills. Every person who has mastered these games started from a place of not knowing them, not practicing them, being subject to the same automatic patterns everyone experiences. The difference is, they became conscious of the patterns. They noticed how their mind worked. They observed their automatic responses. They recognized that thoughts are not facts, emotions are not instructions, identities are not fixed, reality is negotiable, time is finite, meaning is chosen. They saw the games that were running unconsciously and decided to play them consciously instead. This consciousness is the critical ingredient. Most people play these games their entire lives without ever realizing they're playing. They react to thoughts without recognizing them as thoughts. They accept their identity without questioning its construction. They chase goals society assigned without examining whether those goals serve them. They waste time on low-leverage activities without noticing the leverage differential. They drift through days without confronting mortality. Successful people have made the invisible visible. They've brought unconscious patterns into conscious awareness. This awareness creates choice. When something is unconscious, you can't change it. It simply happens automatically. But when you become aware of a pattern, you can examine it, evaluate it, and deliberately choose whether to continue it or adopt something different. The question now is, are you willing to start playing these games consciously? Are you willing to examine your thoughts rather than simply believing them? Are you willing to challenge the narratives you've been telling yourself? Are you willing to restructure your relationship with discomfort, failure, uncertainty, and time? Are you willing to take conscious control of what has been running automatically? This work is not easy. Changing deeply ingrained patterns requires consistent effort over extended periods. You'll forget. You'll slip back into old patterns. You'll face situations where emotional reactions overwhelm conscious choice. This is normal and expected. The practice is not achieving perfection, but gradually increasing the percentage of time you're playing consciously rather than unconsciously. Start with one game that resonates most strongly. Maybe it's the reality negotiation game, becoming aware of how you filter information and consciously directing attention toward possibility. Maybe it's the failure reframing protocol, learning to interpret setbacks as data rather than evidence of inadequacy. Maybe it's the death awareness advantage, regularly contemplating mortality to clarify what truly matters. Choose one game and practice it consistently. Notice when you're playing it unconsciously. Catch yourself in automatic patterns. Interrupt them. Choose a conscious response instead. Repeat thousands of times. Gradually, the conscious response becomes more automatic. The new pattern replaces the old one. Then you can layer in additional games, building a complete mental operating system that serves your growth and well-being. Remember, you're already playing all these games. Everyone is. The question is not whether to play, but whether to play consciously or unconsciously. Most people remain unconscious players their entire lives, subject to patterns they don't understand and can't control. Successful people have become conscious players, deliberately choosing their strategies and continuously refining their approach. The silent battlefield of the mind is where your life is actually won or lost. Everything external, your achievements, your relationships, your impact, your satisfaction, your growth, all of that flows from what happens in the invisible space of your consciousness. Master the mind games, and you master your life. Ignore them, and you remain subject to forces you don't understand and can't control. The choice, as it always has been and always will be, is yours. But now you know what game you're really playing. Now you have a map of the battlefield. Now you understand the rules and strategies that successful people have discovered. The question is what you'll do with this knowledge. Will you allow it to fade back into unconsciousness, returning to automatic patterns? Or will you begin the difficult, rewarding work of playing consciously? The battlefield waits. The games continue whether you acknowledge them or not. But with awareness comes power. The power to choose, the power to change, the power to create a life of intentional mastery rather than quiet desperation. That power is now yours. If you're willing to claim it, mind game.